The US government owes more than $39 trillion. Write that out. 39 followed by 12 zeros. But here's the part that almost never makes the news. That terrifying number you've seen in the headlines? It's only one half of the story. Once you add in the promises the government has already made, the number doesn't just creep up. It can climb past $100 trillion. So stick with me for the next few minutes and I'll show you exactly how much America really owes, who it owes it to, and why the second number might matter more to your life than the one on the news. But first, a quick disclaimer. This is not financial advice. It's just the math nobody wants to do out loud. Let's start with the number everyone argues about, the national debt. As of 2026, the US owes a little over $39 trillion. And it's not sitting still. Over the past year, it grew by roughly $8 billion a day. That's almost $95,000 every second. In the time it took me to say that sentence, the debt went up more than $1 million. Numbers this big stop meaning anything, so let's shrink it down. Imagine the entire country splits the bill like a giant group dinner. Divide that $39 trillion across every household in America, and each one is on the hook for around $290,000. That's a second mortgage, except you never bought a house and you never signed for it. So where did it all come from? Simple. Every year, the government spends more than it collects in taxes. That gap is called the deficit. In 2026, that gap is running near $2 trillion. To cover it, the government borrows, and it covers last year's borrowing by borrowing again, year after year after year. Now, here's the question that should bug you. Who is actually lending America all this money? Not one giant bank. It splits into two buckets. The first bucket is debt held by the public. That's around $31 trillion, and it's owed to investors, pension funds, regular Americans buying savings bonds, and foreign governments like Japan and China who buy U.S. Treasury bonds because they're considered some of the safest assets on Earth. The second bucket is stranger. About $8 trillion is money the government owes itself, mostly to the Social Security and Medicare trust funds. The government borrowed from your retirement money to pay for other things and wrote itself an IOU. Hold on to that detail, because it's where this whole story turns. So far, everything I've told you is the $39 trillion you already knew about. Bad, but at least it's a finite number you can point to. It's money the government has actually borrowed in the form of treasury bonds that have already been issued. Here's what that number leaves out. The national debt only counts money the government has already borrowed. It does not count the promises it has already made. And the government has made some enormous promises. Every working American pays into Social Security and Medicare, expecting to get that money back when they retire. The government has guaranteed those benefits to hundreds of millions of people for decades into the future. The problem? There isn't enough money coming in to pay for all of it. That gap, the difference between what's been promised and what's actually funded, has a boring name: unfunded obligations. And the government's own financial report puts the shortfall for Social Security and Medicare over the next 75 years at about $88 trillion. Now, one honest caveat, because this matters, that $88 trillion is not debt in the same sense as the $39 trillion. Under federal accounting rules, these future promises aren't counted as official liabilities. The $39 trillion is money already borrowed. The $88 trillion is the present value of promises not yet paid for. Two different things. But here's why it belongs in the same conversation. Whether you call it debt or not, it is real money the country has committed to spend and currently has no plan to cover. Stack the borrowed debt and the unfunded promises together, and America's total fiscal obligations aren't $39 trillion. Depending on how you count, they can rise above $100 trillion. By some official measures, that's roughly the size of the entire world economy in a single year. And here's the kicker. Almost all of that hidden shortfall comes from just two programs: Social Security and Medicare. Not foreign wars, not bridges. Two retirement promises the country is quietly underfunding while you read your paycheck stub and wonder where your money went. And because this number lives in long-term financial reports instead of daily debt headlines, most people never hear about it at all. So now the obvious question: if the obligations are this huge, why doesn't the government just print the money and wipe them out? Because printing money to pay your bills is how you get hyperinflation. Flood the economy with cash, and each dollar buys less. We've watched it destroy currencies in Venezuela and Zimbabwe. Print your way out and you don't erase the debt, you erase people's savings instead. Okay then, why not just stop borrowing tomorrow? Because stopping cold would mean massive spending cuts or massive tax hikes. Smaller Social Security checks, fewer services, higher taxes on everyone. Try passing that in an election year. It doesn't happen. So the borrowing continues. And it's getting more expensive. Here's the part that hits your wallet directly. The government pays interest on its debt, just like you pay interest on a credit card. And in 2026, that interest bill crossed $1 trillion a year. Read that again. The US now spends more on interest alone than it does on its entire military. More than $1 trillion a year, just to rent money it already borrowed. And every dollar going to interest is a dollar not going to roads, schools, or hospitals. That's the real danger. Not that America goes broke overnight, but that more and more of the budget gets swallowed by interest, leaving less and less for everything else. Economists call the worst-case version a debt spiral, where interest costs feed on themselves and grow faster than the country can keep up. So, how much debt does the US really have? The official number is about $39 trillion. But once you count the long-term promises already made, America's broader fiscal obligations climb well above $100 trillion. Here's the part worth remembering. Debt by itself isn't automatically a disaster. Used wisely, borrowing builds highways, wins wars, and pulls economies out of recessions. Almost every country on Earth carries debt. The danger was never the debt itself. The danger is pretending the real number is smaller than it is. Because that $290,000 sitting quietly next to your household's name, you didn't borrow it. But one way or another, through taxes, through inflation, or through smaller benefits down the road, someone is going to be asked to pay it. The only question left is who. If this changed how you see those scary debt headlines, hit like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.